It's
Okay.
good to have you, all of you, here in another one of these workshops. Today, we are going to be talking about SeekBeak. SeekBeak is a platform that you can use online, and it was originally created to create virtual tours and interactive 360 images, but lately they also have a feature to add 3D models, and this also relates and is a way to enhance the things that we have been creating in previous workshops. So, for example, we have one related to Polycam and how we can create 3D objects from just taking pictures. And SigBig is a great way to take these models or even 360 pictures, because you can also create 360 panoramas with Polycam or with your phone, and take them to the next level with adding some interactions. And yeah, we will be talking more about this during the workshop. We need an account. So in the chat, you should have the registration link for SeekBeak. And we are suggesting you to sign up for the business plans, because right now, since the 3D models is a new feature, we the normal plan has some limitations. So we want to try to use the business account to have like the full potential. And there is also a link to a Google Drive folder where you can find all the different assets that we will be using during this workshop. Another link that is there on the chat, and maybe some of you are familiar with this or maybe not, is that all the tools that we are teaching in these workshops are also part of a big course. And I'm just gonna navigate a little bit around this. It's called XR Tools for Teaching, and is just a compilation of tools that doesn't require very expensive hardware. They are mostly web-based and doesn't require any coding. So here, if you join the course here on the right, or if you just send me an email, I will type my email in a second. I can make you part of this course where if you miss one of the workshops, or if you want to go back again and see the information that we're talking during the workshop, you have all this content here created. So, as I was saying, we already talk about Polycam, we talk about the Spatial AO, Adobe Aero, and today is the turn for SeekBeak. So a lot of the things that we're gonna be talking today, you can find it here. As I was saying, you can create 360 interactive images, 3D models. There is like the pricing, like where you can register, and then of course some tutorials with all the features that we can find on SeekBeak, and also some examples on of SeekBeak in education. One of the goals of this course is that there is also always a space for discussion. Of right now, because I'm not logging in, is not gonna let me see the discussion, and that this is also the reason why we want people to join, because at the end of each model you have like somehow of reflection and asking people and faculty, how would you implement this tool in the classroom, or like what do you think students should consider if they want to work with this tool. So the idea is to have that space there. So yeah, you will also find the link for extra tools for teaching. And then the goal for today is to get familiar with SeekBeak, and at the end, you should be able to create a basic interactive experience using 360 panoramas and or 3D models. We are gonna cover both. So depending on the project, on all the things that you're working, maybe some things are more useful for you. But I worked a lot with SeekBeak before, and I found like it's a very similar workflow, so everything that you learn in one thing will help you for the other one. So it's I think that's cool. And then yeah, meet the presenter. So my name is Maria. I'm a visiting scholar from Colombia working for Bellevue College now. I am teaching an XR development class and also working with faculty, yeah, just to create and try to promote XR technologies during the classroom. And with us, we have Timothy Allan. I think it's a privilege to have the actual creator of this tool teaching the tool. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna stop talking and let Tim introduce himself. But yeah, let's see. We're happy to have you, Tim.
Great. I'm happy to be here. Good morning, everybody. I'm up above you in Canada right now, and a little over to the right. I'm in Calgary, so good morning. So yeah, I'm Tim, and I guess I'm the CEO, the big boss of SeekBeak. I've been a developer for ever and ever and ever, and looking back at the things I've made, I tend to like to make tools that allow people to make cool things. I don't necessarily make the cool things myself, but I like to make the tools. So I should be able to answer any questions that you have to throw at me as we go through this thing. Because we've got kind of a small group, feel free at any point to raise your virtual hand or turn on your mic or whatever and ask questions, and we can get to those. Um, has is everybody that's in here fresh to SeekBeak, or is this should I start from the very basics, you think? Probably, eh? Okay. We
Yeah, I
will
think
we
yeah, fresh to sick big. So
fresh. All right.
sick big 101.
So the way that I'm thinking this is going to go is I'm going to we'll do a little walk through the SeekBeak. You can get the assets, you can follow along, and we'll create something really simple. And I'll show you a couple of examples of some more advanced things that people have made. And I'm thinking we'll probably start off in like 360 land just to kind of get the concepts down, and then we can do a 3D model as well. And then we can kind of link the two and play around with them and see how things go. Because SeekBeak is a creative platform, it's kind of like I like to think of it as like a Photoshop of sorts, right? So as if I gave Maria a copy of Photoshop and I give myself and Bruce a copy of Photoshop, we're all going to make totally different things, right? So I don't have a very rigid structure in place for this one because everybody uses it differently. So we're gonna take a look at the tool, see how it all works, put something together ourselves, and then look at some other examples, and then probably do a question and answer at the end or midway. Does that sound good? Work for everybody?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Has everybody signed up for a SeekBeak account yet? A trial account, and you're able to see it? Okay,
We say
cool.
yes, yes. I
I
got
see
some yes.
yeses in the
Yeah,
chat.
some yes in the chat. Yeah.
Great. All right, let me share a screen here. I got many monitors I got to shuffle around here. In 1 second. There we go. Share. Okay. Is that coming clear for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So let's start at the very basics then. What the heck is SeekBeak? So SeekBeak is a online platform, like Marie was saying, that gives you the ability to add interactivity to 360 images, flat images, your normal images, and 3D models, as well as Gaussian splats as well. So 3D models and Gaussian splats are currently in beta testing. So we do have pretty heavy caps on them. I was talking with Bruce before we started this, and while we're beta testing, yeah, we have limits on the number that you can upload and things like that. Reason being because it's in beta, and if there's a bug and all of a sudden things have to get deleted or get changed or something, we don't want people to lose a whole bunch of work. So as long as you've signed up for the intermediate plan, the business plan, we should be able to throw some cool things together. So terminology, because SeekBeak is a generic platform, it's not specifically catering for education, it's not specific for real estate or construction or whatever, but everyone uses it for different things, as I was saying. So we have some terminology to go over. So groups are the first thing. And
Tim,
so
just before you go ahead, I just wanted to clarify. Maybe not everyone is familiar with Gaussian splattings and 3D model. We can just like make a quick explanation of what are they. We
sure.
covered some of these during our past workshop, but I think it's good to know to understand the capacities because just for me, like just Gaussian splitings are pretty great. So it's interesting to understand what they are and how they can work on SeekBeak.
Right. Okay. So Polycam does Gaussian splats, doesn't it? Or is
Yeah,
it
it
just
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
So Gaussian, yeah, 3D models. Now this will be interesting to see if I can dissect this into something simple. So 3D models are they're generated, they're not like an image where you zoom into an image and it all gets pixelated, for example, right? The 3D models are a usually a vector-based 3D rendering that you can that you can upload. Gaussian splattings, however, are not a 3D model. They are a new, what is it, novel view synthesis, they call it, where
Yeah.
what happens is you take a whole bunch of photos or a video, which in essence is a whole bunch of photos, and then it uses certain algorithms and AI and whatnot to almost extract a 3D representation of that, but not in a 3D model. It uses things called Gaussians, where if you've used a Gaussian blur in Photoshop, you know that it will blur things fading out through the edges, whereas a Gaussian splat is basically a whole bunch of blobs, colored blobs, stacked on top of each other using the Gaussian theories, which is math that goes way over my head,
Yeah.
to basically generate a visual representation of what you're looking at.
Yeah, I
So I
just
could,
share an example of Gaussian splitings. If someone is curious, it's just like very realistic.
I was just gonna share one
Mm.
because a Gaussian splat is worth 1,000 words, as they say.
Mhm.
So this is a combination of SeekBeak and another application called Intuiface, which is doing the user interface, but it's controlling SeekBeak in the background. And this was done by a client. And so what they did is they went in with a backpack full of camera gear and they scanned the Seattle, what is
Museum of Light.
the Museum of Flight. Okay, so this is not a 3D model. This is a Gaussian splat. It moves and it looks kind of like a 3D model, but where things get to fall apart, as you can see, as we kind of get in the areas where they didn't scan it, you can see these little blobs of things appearing. And so this is what I was talking about with those Gaussians. So it's kind of a trick. When you look at it from certain angles, it looks fantastic. It's very lightweight as far as being able to deliver small file sizes over the internet. However, it does fall apart, unlike a 3D model, when you look at areas that weren't scanned by the camera or weren't picked up by the generation, the AI generation. Does that make a bit more sense now that you kind of see it in action?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you can navigate through things like a 3D model. Um, but yeah, see
Option
there,
for yeah.
we're
But
missing
don't move
half the
it.
plane.
Yeah.
Right. So there is now tentative support for Gaussian splats because this is running currently in SeekBeak. But it's like VR 10 years ago, right? It's the crazy cowboy world right now where it flips on its head every 2 or 3 days. Someone discovers a new algorithm or someone discovers something new, and now they have to revisit everything. So it's new and exciting, but with that comes all the downfalls of technology that's new and exciting. Does that answer it, Maria? Do you think that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have
cool?
some yes on the chat, so I think we're
Okay.
good.
Where is my chat? I gotta find it. Uh, yeah, I can't find it. You let me know if anything
Yeah,
interesting
I
happens in
will.
the chat.
I yeah, no worries.
Okay, so terminology for SeekBeat groups. So on your screen, you probably have something that says, "Oh, you don't have any groups created." So a group is just a way to kind of categorize things. It's like a folder on a computer. So it's just a way for you to store your projects if you have certain projects or if you do things uh, in a certain way of filing things. Groups are what you want. So let's just create a group. So in the groups area here, if you don't have it selected in the navigation, select groups, and we're going to click the plus button. So in SeekBeak, usually every time you see a plus button, it means that's how you add something or create something. And so we're going to add a new group. And so I'm going to call this one XR Lab. Oh, I've already got some presets in here. So this is going to be the XR Lab workshop, I'll call this. Um, There is a description. I'm just going to put something in here. Feel free to put something in here yourself because this will become relevant later on. This is that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the idea is that we're able to create at the same time that Tim is doing his project. So if you have any questions or need more time, you can just type it in the chat and we can, yeah,
Yeah.
help you with that.
Tim, what's the difference between the name and the display name? Where does the group show up as a display name?
So the display name and the description are able to show up. We have something called like an info box, which I'll show later. And so this is a way, if you have information that you want to show people when they're looking at your creation, that persists across all the images, this is where you would fill that out. So I'll put I'll fill this will make more sense down the road.
Okay.
The XR Lab display name. I'll just put it in there just so we can see it later on. And for those of you who are super nerdy, there are ways to run external scripts. If you want to run your own JavaScript or do really complex things, that's all in there as well. It's completely out of scope for today. However, we're going to keep things simple. But yeah, so we're just going to create this new group. I click save. And so now we're in the XR Lab workshop group that I created, right? So you can think of it now we're in like in a folder in a computer. And we have these tabs up here called snaps, maps. What the heck is a snap? So, well, good thing I put this text in here because you can read along with me. So it's basically the combination we think like a short for snapshot. You can think of it as, right? So it's a self-contained little snapshot of things. A 360 image if you're using a 360 image or a 3D model if you're doing that, plus all the hotspots, any files you attached. It's a self-contained little unit, right? So every time you see the word snap, you can think of it as, a 360 image or a 3D model or something like that. Maps are a way to navigate around your snaps. So it could be a floor plan you upload. It could be a literal map, if you want people to click on a map and be able to navigate around. We'll dive into that later. But snaps, maps, and groups are the three kind of terms that SeekBeak uses to kind of categorize things.
Tim, we have a question on the chat. Is saying
Sure.
Carlos is saying that the prompt tells him that he needs to purchase an upgrade plan to be able to run scripts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's yes, custom scripting and all that stuff is currently enterprise plan stuff only. So we're not messing with that today. It's for the super power users.
Yeah, you should be able to do most things without it,
Yeah,
right?
all the stuff we're doing today you'll be able to do on your accounts.
Okay.
I may show
Understand.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. I may show you some things that are on the upper the top enterprise plan, but we'll see if we get to that if we have time. Um, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a snap, right? So let's add some of the content we got from that Google Drive. So we click the plus button again, new snap we're gonna make, and we get the option to select whether or not we're gonna do a 3D scene or a 360. Let's do 360s to start with, and then we can kind of migrate. So if you want, you can drag. I'm going to drag the XR Lab board and then the 1, 2, and 3 images because you can do a multi drop on here. And so here's the 3 images that were taken by Maria as well. Oh, sorry, 4 images because this one as well. Now, before you press anything, you'll notice that there's an image format drop down here. And so equirectangular is the format of a 360 image, right? That's the projection it uses. However, for this board shot here, it's just a flat, straight on image. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this to a flat image. Okay. So the board, change it to a flat. Otherwise, when it loads up, it'll be all wonky and try and map it to a sphere. Whereas these other 3, you can tell just by the thumbnails that they're like if you unwrapped a globe, that's kind of what things look like here. So by setting it to equirectangular, which is the default, we're going to upload those. So I'm going to hit oh, for those of you who are old enough, this is a disk icon down here, which means save. So we'll let that go. So what's happening now is it's uploading them to our servers. And because we allow up to 16K resolution for 360 images, that's way too big to display, on a junky Android phone, for example. They just run out of memory and crash. And so what we do is behind the scenes, we slice those images up into tiles, and then they're delivered over the internet in a tile basis. So what we've got here now is you can see our 360 images. I've got the ability to kind of look around these little grainy thumbnails here. If you're not seeing them rotating, there's a toggle here where you can switch between just a static thumbnail, or if you start getting a bit nauseous because you've got 80 of these on your screen, you can always turn off the rotation and go to a flat thumbnail. Everybody uploaded so far?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so let's click on the first one, XR Lab 1. So all you have to do is simply click on the image and you're zapped into the editor. Okay, so this is the primary editor view for SeekBeak here. And right away you're able to kind of look up and down and see things all over. Oh, so a lens cleaning. Someone needs a lens cleaning. So,
Okay.
okay. So let's talk about let's talk about interactivity now. So we've got the images uploaded, and that's it. It's live right now. If you went and you clicked this share down here, you can get the public URL, and this is live on the internet, right? So you don't have to upload to any web servers or configure anything or whatever. You upload your images. Every image instantly gets its own unique URL, and you can share them. So step one, uploading content. Step two is adding interactivity, and that has two parts to it as well. So the first part is, where do you want people to interact with in your image or your model, right? And then the second part is, what do you want to happen when they interact with it? And like most things in SeekBeak, there's a ton of ways to do multiple things like that. So first off, I'm looking straight at this board here. So let's do something with the board, because we have that close-up image already of the board. What I'm thinking would be cool is if we put something here that says click on the board, or encourages people to click on the board, and then they see the big close-up of the board so they can read it, right? So the way we do that is, if we click the edit button down here, you're now in edit mode, and you'll see this little guy slide open. And if it didn't, you can toggle it down here in the Explorer. So Explorer is like, a file explorer in Windows, or Finder in Mac OS X, right? So it gives you a list of everything that's in your snap currently. So right now, we don't have any hotspots created. Snap objects are another thing we'll look at. We don't have any of those created. And then these two actions, we'll get into actions later on as well. So right now, we got nothing in here. But what we want to do is create a hotspot. So we can click add, and we get a couple options here. And these options change depending on if you're in a flat image or a 360 or a 3D model. But for now, because we're in the 360, we get these options. So we can get a polygon hotspot, which lets us define an arbitrary area, and a point hotspot, which is kind of like a little label and an icon, almost like a sign you can do. A quick jump hotspot is a preset, which we'll look at in a bit. But for now, I think the polygon hotspot is what we're going to use. So I can click on polygon hotspot, and now you get these little crosshairs. And what we're going to do is we are going to highlight the little board here. So I can click there, and it creates this little point, and I can click here, and it creates another point, and so on. And once I get to 3 points, you get the magic triangle, and then 4 points, and now we've got this. Now, you can create as many as you want. Double clicking on a point will delete it. You can move them all around at any point, and even move the entire shape. So if you've done the shape and you just need to kind of tweak it, you can move it around like this. Okay, so it should be very easy to highlight these areas. And then once you're done, click the accept button here on the bottom. All good? If you're following along, good. I see the thumb. I
Yes.
can't see the chat, but
Yeah, that's good.
I see the thumb. All right, so once we click accept, we get this little property panel that folds open. And so this is what contains all the information and what's going to happen, which is the second part, right? So we can name this hotspot. For Polygon hotspots, you don't see the name visually, but this is used in the reporting. So there's a whole reporting suite, which we may get to, where you can pull reports and say like, oh, 50 of my students clicked
Oh,
the board hotspot, or nobody clicked the board hotspot, right? So you can pull reports and see who's
wow.
clicking what, how long people have looked at things, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll just rename this the board hotspot. And right now, it's set to a text type. So hotspots can have multiple types. It's kind of like their primary function. What happens when you click on it? So if I click this, I get the major things that can happen with a hotspot. So for example, right now the rich text one is going to open up a rich text box containing whatever I put in it. However, it could also open up an external URL. Click here to find out more about our program, right? And it goes to the external URL. It can send an email. Click here to find out more information about these programs. It'll open up their email client with an email address already pre-populated. It can play an audio clip. So if you want to have someone narrating something or talking about something, you can do that. It can also, of course, be used for background music or sound effects or anything like that you want. Um, it can show an image. So you have the ability to upload, like in a museum situation. If you click on exhibit, you'd probably want to see close-ups of the things in that exhibit. And so it'll pop up a image slideshow, and you can swipe through them on your mobile or your tablet as well as on your desktop. Um, Telephone, probably not so relevant, but if you like, for example, I give this example a lot. We have a hotel chain that uses us, and if you click on their front desk, it will actually call them on your mobile device. Or if you're on a desktop, it'll open up FaceTime or whatever, or Teams or whatever your phone is mapped to on your computer. Shopping cart hotspot, if you're doing a retail kind of situation, this will show like a buy now button. So with a product name, details, pricing, etc. The Signal hotspot is for the super nerds. It will send off a ping to any external API. So we've had people using this to control Arduino based robots. We've had a home automation store using it. So you'd click on the blinds, and then the blinds, in real life in front of you would open or close, or your Philips Hue lighting, you can control it with that. Um, the Snap hotspot, this is the virtual tour fundamental, right? Being able to move from image to image and creating a cohesive kind of motion. That's the snap. So this would enable you to jump to a different snap. Um, the form hotspot, we have a whole form designer as well. So you don't have to send a link to a Google form or a Survey Monkey or something like that. We have a whole robust form designer built into SeekBeak. So this would pop open your form. Hey, what do you think about this experience on a 1 to 10? Here's some feedback. And then of course, using the reporting suite, you can pull all those details and look at the charts and see what percentage of people gave you a 10 out of 10 and stuff like that. Um, the embed hotspot allows you to embed almost anything that's embeddable on the internet. So YouTube videos, websites, Vimeo videos, content from your CMS. It's got a PDF viewer, an Excel viewer, a PowerPoint viewer. Um, Almost anything that's embeddable can be embedded in there. And then the label hotspot does nothing. It's it's the most boring type. It's if you just want something to just to be there as a label. There are secondary things that you can do with these actions that I was talking about earlier. But for now, the label does nothing. We'll leave it at that. Um, any questions so far? That's a big dump of info.
Sure.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm trying to add the Polygon hotspot, and I seem to be having a little bit of trouble. Maybe it's just my mouse or something. But
Right.
do you mind showing that again, and then I can just see
Sure.
right?
Okay. So I will go and I click add Polygon hotspot. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I just single click
Okay.
anywhere on the screen.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, okay. So mine might so I'm able to add a hotspot. I'm just having trouble adding a Polygon hotspot, but I can come back to this, and it might even be my computer. I can share later, but I'll defer to the other question first, and then I can come on back here.
So what happens when you try to add it? Nothing, or is it?
Sure, here I can show my
Yeah, let's
screen.
show.
Okay, and I'm actually looking at a similar thing as you are because I uploaded. Can you see this? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I go to add. Now let's see if it works, right? I go to
I
Polygon.
cannot see your screen though.
Oh, I
Oh,
can't.
probably I'm sharing. Hang on, let me stop sharing
Yeah.
and then we can.
Also, it could be confusing because my screen is also of the XR lab at Berkeley College. That might be a little
And you
confusing.
just click in different locations.
I'm clicking and nothing's happened. There we
Oh,
go. I had to click harder. I'm
oh.
sorry.
So it was here.
But that's weird because it. Okay. Anyways. Okay. Cool. All right. So then, but so it's probably a problem with my mouse for some reason. Okay.
It sounds like it might be something hardware related if you have to click harder.
Because okay, all right. Well, I will. Let me drop a. I'll close a few other programs that are running in the background, and then I'll see if I can get it to work. So thank you. So it did work. So it's just not working quite as I'd want. But I will stop
That
sharing. Yeah,
that's a first.
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. If I can't get it to work by the end of the session, then I'll check back with you. So,
Okay. All
all right.
right.
Thanks.
And was there one other question?
Yeah, Tim, this is Carlos over at the Yakima Valley Library. So my question had to do with the labels. You did say it does nothing. I guess what I'm just interested in is like basically having some sort of like hanging like sign or some a way to indicate like, hey, this object here and having just, I'm interested in those kinds of like assets, those kinds of things because I'm developing a tour.
Right. Well, have I got something for you? Let's digress. Let's digress for a second and get to see if this is what Carlos is after here. So add a point hotspot, and I'm going to add one right here. Painting info, and so now that is locked in position. Is this what you mean? Like having the ability to kind of have a dynamic label on things?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was looking for. Yeah.
Mhm.
Great. Okay, so we'll leave this here, and I'll revisit that in a second because there's a couple other really cool things you can do with those hotspots. But yeah, that's as easy as it is. And if you need to move it down here, and now it's locked to that position that I've put it in.
So just to let you know, I was running Photoshop and I think another program in the background, and maybe they've upgraded Photoshop to take more juice. I'm not sure, but I turned it off and it's working now. So,
Good.
so all right,
Resource issue, and which is interesting because I was talking with Bruce earlier, saying that part of the
right.
challenges of something like this is letting everybody, even on devices that may not have a whole lot of oomph, still be able to use it. And it's this never ending, not everybody has the latest and greatest toys, right? And
Right, right.
everybody, you know, I don't even, my mom has a taskbar with 4,000 things running on it. Oh, my computer's running slow. Do you know why? I was like, well, yeah, I do. Right. So there's always something.
Yep.
So I guess the benefit for that, Tim, is if it can work on a really low-end device, it means it works all that much better on high-end devices, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, like depending on your monitor, people are running this at 240 frames a second. And, on Androids, you still get 60 frames a second on lower end Android devices. So we try to keep things fairly optimized, and there's not too many ways to shoot yourself in the foot. That said, Gaussian splats do need a bit more oomph than things like this. So it's a trade-off, right? And if you know your audience, it helps a bit. But yeah, there's a never-ending optimization game for sure.
Tim, we have
Yeah,
another question from Carlos.
sure.
I had a quick question, bonehead question. So I'm working with another individual on this project, and
Yeah.
um, obviously we're both want to work in tandem. Like maybe he'll work on like audio portions of the project. I'll be working on other things. So it can basically this program can support multiple people working on the same project at the same time, like interfacing with the same project.
So there is, and I'll touch on this in a second. If you go into the boring backend area here, there's a whole role-based access scenario. So you could invite people to collaborate with you, assign them different roles. You don't necessarily want people to be able to mess around with your billing, but you do want them to be able to create and edit content. And so yeah, you can absolutely do that. Not only that, but you can have different teams. So you can have segregated teams with their own people and their own membership and stuff to work on their own projects as well. And if we have time, I'll dive more into the boring back end stuff. But yeah, that's totally possible. The only caveat is that it's not set up to work on the exact same snap simultaneously, right? Like it's not like a Google Docs where you can see the little cursors moving around and things like
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah,
So yes, you can work on the same projects. No, you don't want to be working on the exact same images at the same time, if that makes sense.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right, so back to XR Lab 1. Oh, so this is the center of the image. This is a good one. So by default, SeekBeak will start looking at the center of the image. However, I kind of want to start looking here. So just properties, details, start view position. So you can set the start view position to change wherever you start. So I can just click this little crosshairs thing here and it'll fill in the pitch and the yaw for me automatically. And I just save that. And if I refresh the page, I now start looking here, right? So that's a quick one to change your starting position. Okay, so we've created our polygon hotspot. And where we left off was here, right? Going through all the different hotspot types.
Yes.
So what I want to do is I want to be able to kind of go to the next snap. So I'm not going to have the rich text. I'm going to select the snap hotspot. And so it says, okay, well, where do you want to jump to? So another thing about SeekBeak is that a group is not like a self-contained project. So you're not limited to just the assets you've uploaded to that project. Every project or every group in SeekBeak can be linked to by another group, which is which is good for flexibility, but also bad. So I can link to any other snap that I've created in my entire portfolio here. But for now, we're just going to use the current group we're in, the XR Lab workshop, and I'm going to jump to the XR Lab board. Okay. Um, we also have a whole transition designer. There's multiple ways that you will transition into another image, and you can pick them here. By default, it's just a really nice crossfade. But for this one, I'm going to do crossfade zoom because what this will do is this will simulate us kind of moving forward into that. So I'm going to select the crossfade zoom transition. And so now if I go up here, the little save icon is flashing to let me know I've got changes. So if I save that, I'm now out of edit mode, right? Which means that I can now interact with this. And as I hover over it, you can see it's got this terrible black color, which we'll fix up in a second. But for now, if I click this, zoop, I am zoomed into the close-up of the board. Make sense?
Super cool.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go. I'm going to click the back button. And I will go back to this image here, and I'm going to go and modify some of these properties. So just by going into edit mode again, click edit and edit mode, and now just clicking on this, it won't zoom us to the next image. It'll open up the properties. So we can go, and there's a whole bunch of properties you can do for polygon hotspots. Colors are the primary one we're going to mess with. So right now, the background is this kind of gray, and then you hover over it and it gets even more opaque. I am going to adjust the opacity so you don't actually see it at all. And then you can change the hover color. And I don't know, we'll change it to kind of like this bluey, right? So that's still hideous. This is why I'm not a designer. I develop things. I don't make them look nice. This is up to you. Okay, so we'll have this kind of light blue color here. And if you want, you can do things like add a bit of a border to things to make it a little more prominent if you want. We'll kind of leave that off for now. But now you can see you don't see anything there until you hover over it, right? Just as something to do.
Yeah, I just
Uh,
I just wanted to say that we have someone talking about escape room, and they say they choose to do the escape room on SeekBeak, especially because of this feature, because you can set the hover effect to 0 as well. So even if you hover, like you don't know there is something that you can click on, right? So you can have like hidden hotspots around and make sure
correct.
like people are clicking on that because not because it's highlighted, it's because they want to click on that. So that's like a great feature if you're trying to like that kind of escape room or yeah, similar things.
That's cool. And yeah, there is, yeah. So right now I've turned off the colors so you don't actually see it's there at all. But it is. So escape rooms is an excellent idea. The other place where I've seen people using hidden hotspots is for doing like safety training. So, here's this big digger that you're sitting in. What button don't you ever want to press, right? And then yeah, they, try and click the different buttons or whatever. The other one was it was like a hunt. A store had it, and so it forced people to look around the entire store because they were looking for a $20 off coupon or whatever. And if you found the hidden coupon, then you got a discount at the store. But yeah, it's a way to get people to look around and look at everything in depth in your image.
Cool.
We're gonna leave the rest of this alone like that. And so we can still see the outline. We still have the ability to move it around with our little control points there. But now, once I save it, it's hidden until you hover over it, and then you're zapped to the next image again. So far, so good. Okay.
Thanks.
And
No questions. Yeah.
no more questions. All right. And so, yeah, these little plus guys here, this is how you add a new point after the fact. So you can add new points, change your shape, and then double clicking them will delete it after. All right, on to the point hotspots. So these guys are a little different. If I click on this one, I get a very similar property panel open up, but there's a few changed features in here. First one being the icon. So we supply a whole bunch of, your usual icons with pointers and circles and arrows and whatnot. You do have the ability to upload your own icons as well. There's support for animated PNGs as well if you want to do something a little more animated. We do have the ability to animate our hotspots built in already. So for example, if I select this solid circle here, um, and go into options, there's an animations tab here where you can do things like have, I don't know how this goes over Zoom, but you can have, if I increase the size of it, right? You can just do little attention grabbing animations just to let people know there's something there. If you want, you can kind of get it to kind of wobble back and forth as well. And that's all customizable using the animations panel. I'm going to turn that off because we're going to be looking at this for a while.
Mm.
There's also a library. So if you spend a lot of time creating a hotspot and you've got your company branded colors and your icon and this and that, you don't want to keep recreating it. So you can add it to a library and then you can pick your different hotspots that you saved in your library to kind of reuse their styles. Um, and yeah, of course, you can duplicate things, duplicate hotspots as well. But for now, painting info, what do we want to happen when someone clicks this? So let's look at the rich text hotspot because it's actually probably the most powerful one. So if I open up the rich text editor, right now I just have your normal kind of WYSIWYG interface, right? So I can be like, this is some painting information, and I can select that. And of course, because it's rich text, I can change the color and I can change the font size and I can make it bold. However, you also have the ability to embed images or videos or even iframe other websites in here. And so, for example, if I go to our examples page here, these guys, I believe, this is a museum up here in Canada. So they've got, as you see, a flat image here, which they're using as their map. And you can click on any of these to jump to the exhibit. And I believe in a lot of these, they're using, no, that's a close-up image. This is the image slideshow that I was talking about. So you have the ability to go through the different images. But what I'm looking for is a rich text hotspot. Of course. Of course, there's none in here. Hang on.
All
Let's go to
images.
this. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but they have background audio playing. So I'm just going to go here and turn that off. Come on. All right. I'm going to try one more and then I'll. Ah, here we go. Okay, so rich text hotspot. What they've done is you can see the rich text up there, but then they've also embedded an image in between, so you can do that and have scrollable content within the text boxes. Text box sizes are also adjustable, so you can see that this one's kind of squished in the middle. You could make it a little more stretched out if you want. But yeah, so this is the gist of the rich text, is being able to embed media as well as your normal rich text using these guys up here. And of course, it's got its own alignment. You can center things, align them however you like, bullet points, etc., etc. Um, it's good stuff here. Okay, and I can save that and save the snap. And so now, clicking on painting info, I get my rich text popping up, right? That's as easy as it gets. And again, moving it, I could actually cover this little panel here, like there. And then to edit it again, just single click it and you get your panel that pops open. Again, it's got all sorts of color options as well, and you can add your borders. We can change the text, icon colors. We can make this stand out a little bit more. There we go, purple painting option, as well as changing the hover colors as well. You can do that. There's a whole bunch of options as opposed for scaling, adjusting things. You can adjust the icon offsets. If you're uploading your own custom icons, you can adjust the offsets. You can scale them, right? Make things bigger, smaller, rotate them around. There's also a handy feature for, let's see, do we have anything that's kind of crowded in this image? Okay, let's do this. Okay, so let's say you have 1, 2, 3, 4 things in this small area here, and you want to add hotspots onto them. It doesn't make sense to add these point hotspots over top of every one, because by default, it's the size of that, right? So that's not going to work. So we have something called marker lines. And marker line is right here, and it lets you do this, where you can have a line at the bottom of it, uh, and adjust the point as well. So you can do things like set up a little flag almost. And so if I go down here, I can have that pointing to that, and then it locks to the smaller image. So you're able to kind of position the hotspots, but still give a visual indicator of what it's looking like. So you're not getting things too cramped all in the one space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All
I
right.
don't think I knew about that feature.
It's actually it's pretty new. So
Oh, okay, I see.
because SeekBeak is a smallish company. Well, I mean, we're in our 10th year now, but it's a smallish company, and a lot of the feedback and a lot of features are from people that say, hey, you know what would be cool, or you know what I found was a real pain in the butt to do. They'll let us know, and we'll kind of go back and forth and say, would this work? Would this work? And so a lot of our features come about from trying to fix people's pain points. This one came about. There was a guy in Brazil who was doing a big aerial shot, and they were trying to sell 1,000 little units or something, right? 1,000 little houses, but all he had was these huge aerial drone shots where every house was about this big. And of course, they wanted to show pricing and listing information for all the houses. And of course, that's not going to work with all these point hotspots. So he's like, what would be really cool is if we had the ability to just have a little line, and then they could click on that, and that's how this came about, which is now, useful for all sorts of things.
And you
So
have it on the hotspots for 3D models. You have something similar there too.
there is something
Yeah.
similar for the 3D model hotspots as well. But now, yeah, now we've kind of tied the two together, so you have the ability to do that. Okay, so I'm going to delete that one because it was just the example. All right, so now we know about point hotspots. We know about polygon hotspots. And those are the two main things that you use in SeekBeak for defining interactivity. The third one that we looked at is the quick jump hotspot. And so if I go, if I create a new hotspot, a point hotspot, and I put it here, like we're going to try and go through this door, and I change this to a snap, and then I change it to, I don't know, XR Lab 2. You can see here that it automatically changes my thumbnail to XR Lab 2. So if I save this and hover over it, it zooms in and I get kind of like a little portal showing me where I'm going to go to. The quick jump hotspot, hold on. If I go and I delete that one and go add quick jump hotspot, the quick jump hotspot is kind of like a pre-formatted way to save you from having to make those. If you're just trying to get people to be able to navigate from A to B to C, you can click and drag this, boink, like that, click, drag, boink, like that, and it creates them for you. It's they're almost like a preset just to make things easy for navigating around. And so that's the quick jump hotspot, which you see here. It's basically just a preset of a point hotspot to make your life easy. So let's navigate to a different image, or let's see how to navigate to a different snap. Now, I don't know.
So XR Lab 2 is
Yep.
the door on the left, I think. Like the very
Th-
left that is
This
open.
this thing,
Yeah, and XR Lab
or
3. Yeah, that one.
yeah, okay. And then Extra Lab 3, I think, is over.
No, like the main one in front of you. Where you have
Doesn't it go out?
the
Doesn't it go out
no, no,
here?
no, all the way
Oh,
there. Where you have the two, the number two. Yeah, that one.
okay. All
I
right.
think.
So
We'll see.
let's let's see. There is an easy way to see. So we had talked about start points earlier and setting the start point of your 360. Every hotspot that goes to a different snap can also have its own start point. So if I'm walking towards this door, I want to start looking in the door, right? Whereas the image itself might be looking somewhere else. So you can set a different start point for each hotspot, and that's done with this little guy here. Manage start point. Yeah, okay. So by default, the image is looking behind us, which is going to get real confusing. So what we can do is we can say, okay, well, let's start looking in the room,
Hmm.
right? And then I'll click the save button there and I click that and I'll save the snap. And so now, if all goes well, I should click this and we should start. Ooh, hold on. I'm going to do the zoom transition again. Crossfade zoom and save. There we go. So now, cross your fingers, we should get whoop warped right into the room, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. So now what I'll do is I'll just set up another quick jump hotspot that goes back to 1. I'll just set it there. And then I can adjust the start point of this guy again. So we are looking, I don't know. Well, yeah, we'll look here because that'll seem more natural. And then I'll set that to the zoom again as well. So now we're able to get zapped over here, get zapped over there. And we've now created a virtual tour. Congratulations.
Easy.
Yeah, easy peasy. That's it. Wrap it up, boys. Does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody great? Okay,
Yeah,
so
I have some thumbs up.
okay. Any questions at all?
Just a quick question. Are the
Sure.
hotspots accessible?
Yes. So we have the ability to keyboard navigation to navigate around. I'm using my arrow keys here. If you press the what are they? The greater than equals n sign or period and comma on your keyboard, it will cycle through the hotspots for accessibility, and pressing spacebar will activate the hotspot that you're on. Um, I've got a document here that talks about our accessibility. We're actually getting there's a magazine that's doing a report on SeekBeak right now for our accessibility, because we also have a text-based viewer as well for vision impaired. So, for example, if I was to go out to the lab here, and I'm going to go and open the preview window. Up here, there's a little the little cog icon, which contains handy little things, and one of them is a preview window. So this will open up how the public would see your image. And so if I go to this, oops, sorry, wrong URL. This one, this is a text viewer rendition of everything we've created, right? So the text viewer is generated dynamically depending on what you've created. And so you can see here, this is our jump to snap hotspot, which links to this. Our painting hotspot, here's what is contained in there, right? So you get that for accessibility for screen readers and stuff as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's also support for the Microsoft controllers for physically impaired people as well. So you can control things with Bluetooth joysticks, and the Microsoft thing, which name completely escapes me at the moment. But yeah, there's all sorts of ways for folks to navigate around. Excellent question. Okay, so as far as navigation, let's talk a little bit more about navigation. There's thumbnails you may have seen down here. So there's the ability to navigate via thumbnails. So you don't want people clicking from image to image to image, and they want to jump to a certain area, they can do that with thumbnails. And in the properties area, that's all manageable under preferences here. So there's a whole whack of preferences that you can set to decide how you want things to look and behave and how you want people to interact with your content. So thumbnails here, you can decide whether or not they're on, whether or not they show everything in the group or everything that's just linked via hotspots, whether or not you want them open to start, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the key fundamentals of SeekBeak is to kind of keep things easy as possible, but allow the power users and people who like to twiddle around and customize things, give them that ability as well. So if you dive deep, there's a ton of customizations that you can do, but on a surface level, we try and keep things very simple to kind of allow navigation and things like that.
Tim, I have a really quick question here.
Sure.
How did you get to first of all, how'd you get to the Snap properties section where you are now?
Okay. Down here, little properties
okay.
button. Yeah.
Okay. And then you have those navigation thumbnails in the bottom, and I believe what you were just talking about is how to adjust what thumbnails get visible on the bottom as part of navigation. I couldn't figure that out before, and I had a huge long line of like, I don't know, 100 images down there, and this is where you control it, right? Okay.
Yeah, within reason. So there's what you can do is by default, it'll detect when you have a jump to snap hotspot, and it will create a thumbnail for that so they can jump around. And then it'll go recursively as well. So if I didn't have any hotspots in here, the thumbnails would be empty. So what you have is you have the option, right here, the little blurb here should help. So you can either list all the snaps in the current snaps group, or it will go through and figure out which ones are linked by hotspots. So if you've got 100 snaps in your group, you don't necessarily want 100 thumbnails on the bottom. You may just want to show a couple, which are linked by the hotspots, and so it'll figure that out for you automatically.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then this little arrow here, which is next to almost, I think, every preference, will apply that to every other snap in the group, right? So if you have 100 different images and you're like, oh, you know what? I'd really like to be able to not show thumbnails anymore. You don't have to go through all 100 of them. You can set the preference and then click this, and it'll copy that preference to every other snap. That's individual preferences. If you want to copy the whole shebang, there's the option to do that as well. So in the preferences here, you can apply these preferences to an entire group, which I don't necessarily want to do. But yeah, so there's multiple options to do bulk assignments of things, so you're not having to go click 100 different things if you want to copy preferences and things like that. Yeah, so the properties is always down here on the left, and that'll open up the snap properties. Even in edit mode, the properties is still there as well. Right, so we've got, what do I have? Let's go in that other link. There was also a 3D model. Let's jump into some 3D model stuff for a second. So I don't know what we want to do.
I actually have a quick question.
Shoot.
So I am actually using a 3D model, but that's just by coincidence here. So I set up my 3D model as a different snap. I'm in a space on the XR lab and I go to this model, but I want to go back.
Yeah.
And go back to the 360 space. Do I just do that by setting up another hotspot and adding a snap to go back to the room?
You can, or what we're going to look at in a bit is this little guy here called overlays, which allows you to create basically your a 2D interface. So you could always have a home button, for example, or a back to start or something like that, or anything you want. But yeah, that's a good way to create 2D interfaces.
I will be patient. Thank you.
Okay. Great question though. That's a good that'll give me a nice little segue into overlays. Okay, so let's upload a model. So I'm gonna go 3D scene here, and in that assets folder, there was the student anatomy one, which looks like this. So you get a little preview here, and you can set that preview to be a thumbnail if you'd like. I'm just going to leave the name and the description the same. This, for those of you who don't know much about creating 3D models, it is getting a 3D model to display properly on the internet is a bit of an art.
Yeah.
It's tricky. And so we provided a checklist here, which seems pretty substantial, but we've tried to tick a lot of boxes. Because you can have a model that's 100 megs in size, but only really needs to be 1 meg in size, right? Depending on if you've set things up incorrectly or using humongous textures that don't need to be there. So it's an art form. The one that we got off Sketchfab is, what is this? This is 3.5 megabytes. And this was, Maria, this was scanned with Polycam, wasn't
Yes.
it? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I use this one because this is kind of like a real world example of what somebody at Bellevue had already scanned in. And so Polycam, I'm assuming optimizes this pretty decently already. But again, yeah, it's tricky. We've supplied the checklist, but you don't want to be uploading gigantic size models, right? Because nobody wants to wait a minute for your model to download and then have to look at it on their mobile. So it is an art form. Now,
Tim,
this
oh,
start
excuse
with
me, Tim.
Yeah.
Tim, regarding that, what's a rule of thumb for file sizes for objects coming in? I mean, what's the maximum number of megabytes of
So
per object that are going to work
I mean,
well?
I'm on the enterprise plan, and currently we have it capped at 100 megs, right? Which is, 60-70% of all traffic is on mobile devices these days. However, does someone really want to download a 100 meg model to look at whatever you've made, right? It's so while the maximum size currently is 100, you'd still probably want to shoot for way below that. That entire Museum of Flight that we looked at earlier, I believe that was 30 megabytes after it was compressed down. So it's how long's a piece of string, as they said back in Australia when I lived there,
So,
right?
so a lot of those scanned anatomy objects models, they were weighing in between like 1 and 3 megabytes, something like that.
Easy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It'll load instantaneously. It'll run on anything, and it still gets the point across, right? You don't need it doesn't need to look like you're in an Avengers movie, right? It doesn't need to have photorealistic quality all the time, but again, it depends on the project. We have a company that's doing Formula One race car stuff, right? Where it shows a model of the Formula One car, and they do want it to be high fidelity, and they don't care that it takes a minute to show up on people's screens, right? Because they want that fidelity. So again, it's kind of a project per project basis, but yeah, one to 3 megs is fantastic.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to drop this in here. I'll set the thumbnail. Now, this default lighting, again, 3D models can have lighting baked into them. They can require lighting, or they can be completely immune to lighting and they won't work. So we've included this. And if you turn it off and things disappear, then you probably need some default lighting. Another way to save on CPU is to bake in lighting, which a lot of people do. This one obviously doesn't because it goes black without any default lights. But I'm going to leave this as it is and click the save button. And so what this is going to do is this is going to create my snap. And then it's going to upload the 3D model, as it says down there, and attach that as what we call a snap object. And then it's going to process it. And now it's ready to go. And again, you can see the little icon up here shows the 3D as opposed to these guys, which are 360, and then this guy, which is flat. So it's all exactly the same. Just a casual mention, you can drag and reorder things if you want. If you've uploaded things and they're not in the right order, you can drag and drop and reorder things. This order in here is saved in like the thumbnail view, as well as we have the ability to show a text drop down, which will show the titles of these where people can select and navigate around via text, and that's all managed by dragging and dropping these things in different orders. Just as a side note, you can also sort them using this guy here.
So Tim,
Okay, so we're going to click.
When we upload these 3D model images, there's
Yep.
an option to show bounds. What's the purpose of showing the bounds? Is it just as a reference, or is there any?
So the showing the bounds is kind of like so you're not shooting yourself in the foot, because sometimes you may have exported something that's invisible, and so the software package, you may have an object that's this big, but when you show the bounds, it's actually this big because you've left something invisible over here. So it's more of a sense check for you to see like, hey, yeah, this looks all right.
Okay, of course. Thank you.
Like if I go into edit mode here, no, I'm not seeing the bounds. How do I get the bounds? I should know this. I made it.
Well, I was seeing it when I uploaded, and it was
Right.
and that was all. But maybe there's another spot. So it was like where you first uploaded.
In the preview there is.
Right. Okay, cool.
Got it. Okay, so the reason I picked this one is the cute baby, but also because it had labels on it already, right? And so I was thinking this would be a great kind of way to show that, hey, you can take labels that were there in real life and kind of make them interactive as well. So by default, I don't know if you saw that, but if I refresh the page, down here it says there's no starting camera waypoint found. So what it does is it just says, okay, the model's this big. I'm just going to make it fill the whole screen first off, right? So by default, it sizes to the whole screen. It doesn't know where to start. So now we have a new concept in 3D model land only called waypoints. So if I go into edit mode here, you'll see there's two new things that weren't in the 360 image. So we've got something called waypoints and paths. So waypoint, if I click it, it gives you a blurb here as to what it is, but basically a waypoint is like a saved snapshot of your camera position, as well as any other bounds that you have, because you may not want people to be able to look all the way up and down, and you only want them to be able to look at different things. You can set bounds for your cameras. So a waypoint is all of that encapsulated in one little thing. So to demonstrate, let's say I want to start by looking at this view here. So I can click the plus button again, and I'm now creating a new waypoint. So I can name this one start point. We have multiple different control modes as well. So by default, you can see here I'm orbiting around. You can also do orbit plus move, whereas if they've used two fingers, or if they're on a mobile, or the right button, you can move like a Google Maps type of view where you'll be flying over top of things. There's just the fly mode where it's like a Google Maps interface, and then first person On the enterprise plan, we have things which will generate a collision mesh automatically where it figures out, what a floor is and what a ceiling is and a wall, and you're able to kind of walk around it like a video game style, right? Like a first person, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense with models like this. But if you had a real estate house or an outside area and you want to be able to navigate around, like the Museum of Flight, for example, that's how you would do that. For now, we're going to keep it easy. We're going to say, let's start looking at this. So I can click save. I'll save my waypoint. And if I use my arrow keys, if you go here to the question mark, it gives you the edit mode controls if you ever forget what they are. But for the most part, it's like the usual WASD scheme. So you can use WASD to move around and then Q and E to go up and down. But if I go over here and I click my waypoint, we're warped back to the waypoint. There's a little option here. It says set start waypoint. Yes. So now if I refresh this, we start at the starting waypoint. All good so far?
Yeah. Just
Okay.
a quick question, Tim.
Yeah.
So is this is all available on the basic as well as the business plan? Or
So the individual plan currently, I think you're only allowed to upload one or one or two different 3D models with a 10 meg cap on it. The business plan allows you to upload a little bit more with a higher file size cap. But as far as features, yeah, all these features would be available in that one as well.
I see.
Since we're talking about that, so I'm
Yeah.
actually using a individual plan right now,
Okay.
and I've uploaded one 3D object. I want to upload another, but I think I'm exceeding the plan, or maybe I have one in another file. So I'm looking to see how many 3D objects it allows.
Let's see. So right here, the keyword being while in beta, right? So this is what I was talking about while we're super capped. Oh yeah, individual, you got one.
Got it.
And then the business has three.
Okay.
There's
All
a
right.
reason for that. There's a good reason for that, Ron.
Yeah.
Could you explain that, Tim? You had explained that earlier to
Yeah,
me.
well, yeah. So I think I talked about it earlier, saying that what we
Okay.
didn't want was somebody uploading, 100 different models and then us having to send the email saying like, sorry, we found an issue or we found a bug. We have to delete all your models to update the database or something like that. So we've capped it while we're beta testing. Hopefully very, very soon we're releasing the new updated plans, which of course will have much higher limits. But there's no like anything in tech land, there's no solid ETA for that yet, but it's very, very, very close.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. So
Thank you.
yeah, unfortunately, that's why we had asked to trial the business plan. But yeah, if you're on the individual, you're stuck with the one, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right, so let's go and I'm going to show a couple other things that we haven't talked about. So that was waypoints. I'm going to create another waypoint just for the heck of it. So let's say we want to, um, I don't know, we'll look over at this perspective for whatever reason. I'll create a new waypoint, and this will be, the outer view, and I'll keep it at the orbiting. You can also do things like changing the rotate speed, or if you want people to be able to navigate really fine increments, you can adjust the speeds. You can set limits, whether or not you want them to only be able to look certain degrees up or down or left to right. Um, then there's also, oh yeah, we don't need that right now. That's if you're doing customized stuff. And so I've clicked that, and now I'm able to go back and forth between my two waypoints. Okay. So let's see how hotspots work. So I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of navigate around, and I'm going to click add. And you'll notice that this menu here is a little bit bigger and a little bit different. There's different things that we can do. But the hotspot, there's a 3D hotspot. And so I'm going to add a 3D hotspot. And it's exactly the same principle. However, you'll notice this little selector here knows where things are in 3D space, right? Like it knows this is curved, it knows it's pointing this way. So you're able to kind of point your hotspots wherever you'd like. So if you want it coming straight off this 2 here, I can do that. And it's now created this 3D hotspot, which is attached directly to my model. Okay, so same idea as far as adding the hotspots, but completely different execution. So I can also click this, just like the other ones, to get into the properties here. And hotspot types are all exactly the same. However, there's a new background field here, which we'll look at in a second. But for now, what we can do is open up the appearance tab. And so this is completely different. So actually what I'll do, I'm going to pick an icon for this just for kicks. And this will be, who doesn't like a smiley face icon? Okay, so we get the smiley face guy. And this is like the lines we saw in the previous one, right? So you can adjust the distance from it, you can adjust the size of it. But you'll notice there's this use pixels option here. So if I zoom out, you'll notice that the hotspot still stays the exact same size while everything shrinks down, right? Whoop, I'm getting lost. Here we go. Okay, so that is because it's always going to be 64 pixels wide or circumference, right? Depending on, it doesn't matter about the view. Do you want it to do that so it's always visible? Completely up to you. The option is, well, now, now it's 64 meters big. We'll shrink that back down. Okay, so now we're not using pixels, we're using meters because everything in 3D land is using real world measurements. And so now this is going to be 0.08 of a meter, which means that as I zoom out, it's going to scale with my 3D model. Make sense?
Yeah, nice. That's a nice picture.
Yeah, that's
Right.
great.
So yeah, whether or not you want that or not is completely up to the project. Also, you can do cool things like adjust the center point. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for this guy. Where it does make sense is if I go to my background, I can pick an image. And what do I have? Okay, well here, how about this one? Request, well, no, I want a square one. This one says request more info, but I kind of want one that's a rectangle shape. What do I have? A paint. Well, yeah, okay, we'll do a painting. Why not? So now we have a painting on there. And I'll make that a little bit bigger. But what you can do is you can have it kind of coming off like this, right? So almost again making the flag type thing and being able to organize things however you'd like, right? So now
Tim, I just
yes.
wanted to be conscious of time. It's 11:20 now.
Woo.
I know this is a lot to cover, but I think we also want to have some time for questions if there are
Yes.
any. But yeah, we can just try to cover more of
Okay.
the basics and then
All
yeah.
right. So okay, so yeah, so 3D hotspots, same principles as the other ones with a little bit more bells and whistles where you can adjust things like this. Do you want it always facing the viewer, or do you want it focused from the point where it's coming out of, right? So there's all these different options which are available to you in 3D models. And of course, the same interactivity is there as well. So this is information on the number 2 area. I can put this back to an icon, which makes a bit more sense. Okay, and I'll save that. And I click this, and I get the hotspot interactivity that pops up with the 3D model. One other big thing that I'll show you that you can do is the overlays. Do we have 10 minutes to do an overlay thing?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
for
we
sure.
can.
Whatever you want to cover, Tim.
Okay.
It's all great stuff.
Okay. So back to the question about having some way to go back, right? Let's take a look at overlays here. So overlays are, I mean, they're almost like a whole other program in themselves. Let's create one. We'll create one called the XR overlay. Feel free to also create an overlay if you would like. You just have to get up to the menu in the overlays area here. And so this is, if anyone's done a website development or seen like one of those drag and drop interfaces, this is very similar to that as well. So we have things called nodes, we call them, which lets you design interfaces. And then if I go and I create a container node, for example, what we can do is I can create, actually, let's change the color of this, right? So this is using CSS behind the scenes, which is the way that web pages are formatted. So if anyone has any web page experience, a lot of this will be very familiar, right? Background colors and borders and rounded corners, etc. So if I change the background color of this to kind of this pinky color, then I can go click the plus button and add a new thing in here. I'm going to add an image. So again, it's all drag and drop, stretch things out, resize them however you want. Uh, I'm going to add a background image and I'll select an icon and we'll do arrows for now, just because that's easy. Okay, so we'll create an arrow icon and I'm going to name this because arrow up, because it'll come back to bite me later when I'm trying to assign actions to these things. And then I can go here and I can duplicate that arrow, except now I'm going to change this to a down icon arrow, and I'll rename this arrow up copy to arrow down. Right? And I can shrink this and we'll put it like this. There are ways to size things by percentages as well as by pixels if you'd like. There's also the really neat ability to see how things are going to look on different devices, where it will simulate different devices for you, even if you rotate it in landscape, so you can get it, make sure everything kind of looks good on the different devices. There's an iPhone, iPads, right? So, and I'll set this back to responsive. Yeah, so overlays is a whole other topic unto itself, but we'll just do very simple stuff today. So you can see here I've got my container, and then inside the container is my up and down arrows. Make sense so far? Sort of. Okay. So we're gonna save this now. And so now we've created that overlay called the XR overlay. So we'll go back to our group, which I named XR Lab Workshop. And we can go into, we'll go into 3D model one here. And in the properties panel for the snap, there's an overlay section. So now what we can do is we can say, hey, when someone loads this snap, I want it to use the XR overlay. So now here's our 2D overlay and ink, right? So it stays on top of everything, overlaid on top of everything, right? And so it doesn't move. So if you want to create a home button or a restart tour or a whatever, this is how you do it. You can also assign actions to almost anything, really. But what we're going to do is we're going to assign an action to these two overlay nodes, we called them. So if I go into edit mode again, now we're getting into those actions that I was talking about earlier. So overlay node actions, I can open this up and it shows me that hierarchy that we were just looking at in the overlay section. So it knows that I've loaded this overlay. I can say, hey, when someone clicks that arrow up, what do I want to happen?
Hmm.
So you get a whole schwack of actions that you can do as well, right? So not only all the stuff that hotspots can do, but other cool things. And one of the coolest things in the 3D scenes is being able to trigger different waypoints. And so, if you're looking at an image of a car engine and you want someone to look at the pistons, you can click a button and it'll go and look at the pistons you're looking at, for example. So in our baby one here, we'll say go to waypoint. On click, when someone clicks this arrow, I want you to go to the start view point that we had made earlier. And I want it to take a nice smooth 5 seconds. Okay, does this make sense, everybody? We're assigning an action to that button that we had created in the overlay, and we can save that. And so now if I get out of edit mode and I just move the camera over here just for the heck of it, and I click up. Oh, we get this nice, seamless 5-second transition to our first waypoint.
Is there any reasonable limit with the waypoints? I mean,
I mean, not really.
right.
Not before you start pulling your hair out trying to figure out where waypoint
Okay.
470 is.
Okay. All right. So like
Yeah.
like 10 or 20, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, easy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then likewise, we could do the same thing with the down button. Oops, wrong one. Explore, arrow down, and then again, we could do the waypoint on click and go to the outer view, but take 2 seconds to get there. Right? So now we're able to zip around our 3D model with our custom menu that we had made. And so you could also have a back button there, which would take you back to the main menu, or a main menu button, or anything you want, really. Again, it's really up to you how you want to do things. Overlay nodes also have the ability to hide and show themselves, so you can create menus, or if you click on one thing, then another menu will open. I mean, sky's the limit as far as what you want to do with that. I'll touch on paths quickly. A path is a way to string waypoints together. So if you want to make a guided tour of a 3D model, you could have it go from waypoint 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get this nice kind of fly through. I just did one for a city. They had scanned a city, and using the paths, you were able to go from different waypoints, and you could fly through like a helicopter through the city, for example. So I can create a new path. Say I want you have this waypoint and then this waypoint. And so now what's going to happen is it's going to take waypoint 1 and then, oops, I was already at waypoint 2. Hold on, let's move over here. Right, so waypoint 1, woo, and then go to waypoint 2. Right, so you can string waypoints together using paths to do animations and stuff like that.
Nice. I
Right?
think, yeah.
Is that too much? Should we end it and do some questions or something? I mean, I could go on for hours. Bruce will have to tell me to shut up.
Oh, no, I'm totally right. A lot of these are new features I've never seen before. I did have one quick question about file types, 3D object file types, and
Yep.
these were GLBs, correct? What other file types do you support?
GLB and GLB and GLB. So
Okay, good.
All right.
That makes it easy.
So for those who don't know, 3D model file formats are a disaster, right? Every company has their own. Adobe has their own proprietary ones. Sketchfab has a proprietary. And so GLB is an open standard which is optimized for web delivery, and almost anything can export a GLB. So if you're using Blender, you can export GLBs. If you're using any other software packages and it doesn't export GLB explicitly, you're able to export it as like an OBJ, for example, and load it into a Blender or something like that, another freebie program, and export GLBs. But currently, just as things are right now, we support GLB format.
And I think most online tools, like for example, Polycam, will let you export directly GLB
Yeah,
files as well.
yeah.
So it's kind of a standard for web 3D.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it is the standard. There's always people working on it as well on improving it, but it's always been backwards compatible, which is nice as well. So there hasn't been any issues around that. But yeah, GLB is the standard web format.
I do have another question about VR headsets and what your
Yep.
recommendations are in terms of using VR versus the flat screen format like we're looking at here.
Yep.
What's your experience been with that? Because I know 3D or VR represents a whole problem set in itself.
Yeah.
So how are you thinking about that now?
So, I mean, ironically, SeekBeak started because I got a VR headset, right? And so just to digress, that's where the name SeekBeak came from. Because when I was developing it, I was developing it in goggles. And in order to look at something and have it trigger a hotspot, I had to figure out where my nose was, the coordinates of my nose. So I was literally seeking with my beak. So that's where the SeekBeak name comes from. But SeekBeak started as VR headset based only, and then has kind of migrated into what it is now. The issue with VR headsets, even 10 now, like 12 years down the road, is that they are unable to display HTML content when you're in immersive VR mode. So, for example, um, like this is all HTML, right? A YouTube embed is HTML. A PowerPoint embed is HTML. These things are HTML, which can't be displayed when you're in immersive mode in a VR headset. So while SeekBeak does support being able to look around in VR immersive mode, you're not going to be able to use the vast majority of this functionality because it only displays 3D graphics. So you get basic navigation where you're able to navigate between images and look at your 3D models and stuff, but anything that is HTML based that is being able to be displayed in the browser doesn't work, unfortunately.
I see.
And
So that's just a problem that's impossible to work around, it sounds
it's
like.
it's a huge thing, and so I mean that's why a lot of like VR based applications look like a PlayStation 1 game, right? Because everything has to be, there's no concept of text in VR, for example, right? Like you can read text, but it all has to be triangles that are being drawn to the screen. It's not like a browser where you can just type in it and all your text magically appears. So everything in immersive VR mode has to be 3D graphics, which usually leads to lower quality because you have to keep your graphics at lower quality to keep frame rates up. It's ugly. I wish it
Yeah.
supported HTML, but we're now, yeah. Yes.
Um,
Question.
so I'm wondering if you're
Yeah.
doing most of the JavaScript and CSS coding yourself, like for the overlays.
Yeah.
So in order to create that, was that you who did that?
I've written most of SeekBeak, so this is, yeah.
Because that's pretty cool. Yeah, I
It's
mean that's amazing how responsive it is. I think.
it's like a little Wix or Squarespace that I built inside of SeekBeak is
That's
pretty
great.
much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, congrats. Yeah, I
I'm
mean
gl
it works well. I think so.
Great. I'm
Yeah.
glad you appreciate that. It
So,
warms my
Ron,
heart.
Ron's taught a lot of CSS and JavaScript and
Mhm.
HTML classes in the past, and
Mm,
so I think he's got a keen appreciation for the difficulties you had to overcome to get
got
this
it.
stuff to work. I
Right.
think
So
Actually, it's probably funny because everyone else is like, "Oh, the 3D models are cool," but I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look at that border! Look at that! Look at that CSS!"
so behind the scenes, yeah, it's generating all CSS, and then there's also positioning where you
Right.
can use Flexbox to set up the positioning of things. So you've got all your,
Great.
your normal Flexbox styling and stuff, but I've kind of wrapped it so it's hopefully a little more user friendly than manually coding it. But
Oh no,
yeah,
it's very cool.
well,
Well,
another part of this, Tim, is I think that after a while we're looking at XR as encompassing spatial computing, right? Which is
yeah,
in a spatial environment on a flat screen or smartphone. It doesn't necessarily have to be within a VR headset to be XR, right?
no. And it's tricky because especially now with all these funding cuts and budgets and stuff, not every classroom can afford a $3,000 Apple headset or 20 Meta headsets, and not everybody wants to use Meta at all because of the data issues and privacy issues. And so
Yeah.
keeping things accessible and being able to use them on a flat screen, yeah, it's very nice. And it doesn't, yeah, just because it's on a flat screen doesn't mean it's not XR, I guess.
Yeah.
I agree. um
you
now
know, it is fun to hear your voice because I've gone through some of your tutorials, of
ah,
course. And you know how that works, where even if someone's not super famous or something, but you listen to their voice all the time, and it's like, oh my gosh, there he is in
hey, I
person.
know you.
Yeah, so that's nice. So it's great to kind of meet you here and to have a workshop from you directly. So thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you so much, Tim. I think this was very useful. Yeah.
Perfect.
So much.
Yeah, Tim, thanks so much for coming in. And we're recording this, and this is really valuable information. I'll need to go back and review some of this just to make sure I've got some of your new features, and especially your movement into the being able to support 3D objects and the wayfinding,
Yep.
the ability to annotate and move around 3D objects. That's really a nice new feature. Um, I'm really looking for, I guess my other question is I imagine, Maria, you built did you create that 3D model that was navigated through, or was that you, Tim? It was a
The baby
apartment.
scan.
It was an apartment that you could walk through.
Oh,
That sounds like Maria.
Maybe that was Maria.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this.
I think, well, there are
Oh,
different ones, but like
Yeah, this.
one you have
Yeah, yeah.
on the website
yeah.
where you
Oh,
can
okay.
walk on a first person view.
That
Yeah.
was Maria's.
Yeah, Maria's incredible. She's done a lot of great stuff. So this is yours, Maria.
Oh no,
No,
that's
sorry.
Tim.
No,
That's
this
Tim's.
was
Okay.
I don't know if I have the
Well, we might have you back and before our grant is over. Our grant ends in about a year and a few months, and
Yep.
and we'll check in with you, and hopefully this
This is it. This was
pays
what I
off
was.
for you as well. So
great.
yeah.
This is the one Maria did. And so now, yeah, so you're able to walk. This is the collision detection I was talking about. So, right, like I can't walk into that counter, but I can use the arrow keys to kind of navigate around
Wow.
the house, or you can click on the various hotspots and it'll toggle the waypoints for you and point you into where it was going to point you. And then she's made an overlay here, which triggers the different waypoints as well in the house.
Maria,
Or
do you
you can,
remember what the weight of all this was? How many megabytes this was? I know it looks like it's scaled down size wise, but do you remember what the
Yeah,
size of this model
not
is?
really, to be honest. It was a
Okay.
it's
while ago, but like probably like 50. I'm not sure. Do you have the numbers there?
I don't it wasn't very big because there's not a ton of like high res textures used everywhere, which is where the majority of your file sizes come from.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that big at all. I'm guessing probably maybe 20 megabytes or so, if that.
So,
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Good to have you, and I'm glad the information was useful. We will be uploading this recording in the following days.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
eh,
And then feel free to contact me via the website. There's a contact us page there. If you've got any questions, and it usually goes directly to me. And if it doesn't, it'll get forwarded to me if you've got any questions or anything that that you would like answered.